Okay, so we're going to be talking about this new opportunity space, and wonderful. I've been working in this space for over 20 years, maybe even longer than that, actually, since the early 80s when I was playing around with interactive laserdisc stuff run by PCs. So over that time, I've developed lots of CD-ROMs and kind of websites and written books about it, and developed all kinds of exhibitions and programs and seminars and so forth. So basically, the last one we did, the big one we did here, was called Interact, and it covered something, it illustrated something of the diversity of the new media opportunity space, looking at graphics and typography and information mapping and virtual realities and installation work and performance work and all sorts of video work as well, and some technology development, product development. So we covered quite a range of stuff in that Interact show here a couple of years ago. And last year we had a symposium here on interactive media content, looking at the content of television and how that was going to develop over the next few years. So that too kind of dragged in a whole range of things that one doesn't normally associate with television, such as the use of Ajax and Web 2 tools and so forth, and the fact that the BBC considered Google their main rival. You know, it's kind of interesting stuff. I've also made some television programs, so I kind of know what it's like from the ground up on that kind of stuff. And but this diagram, of all the diagrams that I've come across, this diagram by Nicholas Negroponte of MIT illustrates the convergence that's happening over the last 10, 20 years or so. On the left is a diagram he drew to raise funds for the media lab, the setting up of the media lab at MIT in the mid-80s. And it showed three concentric converging circles, a Venn diagram basically, of how media, telecoms, and computing were converging together to create a new media space. And this was his prediction about how those Venn circles would overlap roundabout in the last few years, as it were. So you've got a huge area in the middle in which all this new stuff takes place. So it's kind of a convergence, and this is another way of looking at it, if you like, of algorithmic space converging with digital media, with all the extant media that's been digitalized, and with digital machinery to create this new media space. It's quite a big space. This is a diagram I did a few years ago, so it's a bit out of date now, but it gives you some idea of the kind of complexity of the space that we're inhabiting. You can see here I've got a little isotype figure in the middle with concentric circles for personalization, communications, and community, which are fairly obvious. And on this side, I've got dynamic media, by which I mean all the media that are produced by computers and can't be made without computers. And on the right-hand side, all the stuff that is basically mediated by computers. It's analog media that's been turned into digital media. So, and all these little bits of writing on here are kind of interesting kind of developmental areas that designers and various other people are tackling. Dynamic media is obviously to do with things like computer games and flight simulation and virtual realities and all that other stuff that can only be generated by computer. So it's a big space, and inside this space, students, designers, developers are inventing new ways of doing things. There's a way of mapping this space as well, chronologically, and for that, the most useful diagram is the famous diagram by Gordon Moore, called Moore's Law, which illustrates the doubling of transistor components on chips every 18 months for the same dollar price. So for $1,000 in 1940, you'd have bought something that was equivalent of a load of manual calculators sitting down and doing it by hand. Whereas by 2019, Raymond Kurzweil is predicting that we're going to have a computer that, for $1,000 that will perform the kind of functions that we expect from a human brain. He also goes on to say that by 2029, we'll have a computer for $1,000 that will perform all the calculations and have the performance you might expect of a village of people, of human brains, as it were, several hundred. So this is kind of interesting speculation and another way of looking at the opportunity space that we're kind of dealing with. And this is a diagram borrowed slightly and adapted from the BBC's Innovation Labs last year. And this year they used the same diagram to describe the chronological shift in marketplace as far as the BBC was concerned, vis-a-vis all their competitors. And you can see that there are a lot more competitors in the new digital space, because basically everyone's business is converging into this space. So who'd have thought that BT would have launched a television program, or television channel? Maybe they haven't, but you know, Virgin and BT and all those people are kind of addressing the same territory. They're addressing the digital content territory that the BBC had to itself for so many years. So this is a diagram that they use in their Innovation Labs, which is basically a laboratory they run a workshop they run every year to try and get industry advice about where the BBC ought to be going. In return for any advice they get from industry people like me and like you guys, when you're invited along, they commission some programs from you as well, which is kind of fun. There is another chronological way of looking at it. This is an inspiration timeline that I've been gradually fiddling with over the last 5 or 6 years, which is basically a timeline of new media developments since 1945. And you can see the new media developments are quite loose, really. The Dansette record player features as a new medium, because it was. And so does Cinerama, Cinema, and so forth. This is going to be published as a published on demand book soon, as soon as I can find a way of kind of getting it peer reviewed before I publish it. And there's an online version, which I think the server's down for, but we'll have a quick look. So the problem with these kinds of things, from a developer's point of view, is doing zillions of clearances. Yes, it's still down, but basically this website will soon be going kind of live. It's a kind of test at the moment. And I've done other kinds of ways of mapping this as well, this concept map of interesting trends in new media. I'll just run over a few of these before we go on to the first speaker. So you can see this is quite a broad space. And in fact, what I ought to do is tell you a little bit about NM-X before. I was going to show you lots of bits of video, but we have got a shorter space of time this week than we had last. So this is some of the stuff I talk about. In terms of personal promotion and development, all of you, I hope, are aware of the kind of range, the galaxy of new ways of getting your work out onto the web and into the world. And these include MySpace, Facebook, Flickr, YouTube, Delicious, Twitter, Jaiku, Second Life, Selfcast, Rememble, Google Video, Habbo, Rumble, Revu, and there are dozens of others, social networks that allow you to show work. So you should be getting stuff out in this. I noticed there were several interesting developments here this year, which was Goldsmiths. They're putting their whole show online as well. So the design degree show was in Second Life, which is kind of fun.